They beat the hell out of me. They destroy my will to live. Believe it or not.
Jack Palance's story is straight out of a movie. Born from struggle, built on sweat, and sealed with secrets that later came crashing down. Born Vladimir Ivanovich Palanyuk on February 18, 1919, in the gritty town of Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania, he was the son of tough Ukrainian immigrants who worked their hands raw in coal mines just to get by. Life didn't hand him anything easy. His childhood was all about long days, aching backs, and the dream of a better tomorrow in America. As a young man, Jack worked in those same brutal mines, breathing dust and danger every single day. That backbreaking work carved him into something unshakable. It gave him the steel and grit that would later make him unforgettable on screen. From those dark tunnels, he carried a mindset built on toughness, respect, and sheer survival. Those qualities became the backbone of both his acting and his real-life code. Before fame found him, Jack was already making waves as a fierce athlete and a boxer. Fighting under the name Jack Brazo, he stepped into the ring swinging, earning a rep for raw power and unshakable courage. Boxing taught him way more than punches. It gave him control, precision, and the confidence to own any space he walked into. Those lessons later turned him into a master of presence and emotion on camera. But life hit him hard when World War II broke out. He served bravely as a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Forces, only to suffer a devastating training accident that left him with serious burns. The pain changed his face forever. But it also gave him that sharp, rugged look that would one day make Hollywood stop and stare. After the war, Jack didn't slow down for a second. He swapped gloves for scripts, diving into acting with the same fiery drive that once fueled his fights. In New York, he trained tirelessly, mastering classical techniques and learning the discipline of the stage. Soon enough, Broadway lights found him, and Hollywood came running, captivated by his raw power, deep eyes, and that unforgettable, chiseled face. Jack Palance didn't just step into Hollywood, he exploded onto the scene. His debut in Panic in the Streets, 1950, turned heads, but it was his icy, bone-chilling performance as the gunfighter Jack Wilson in Shane, 1953, that sealed his legend forever. With those piercing blue eyes and that eerie calm, he redefined what it meant to be a villain. He didn't need to shout or swagger. His quiet menace said it all. Every move, every stare screamed danger. That performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, and even decades later, it still stands tall as one of the most unforgettable portrayals in Western history. Through the 1950s and 1960s, Palance became the very definition of intensity. In films like Sudden Fear, Man in the Attic, The Big Knife, and Attack, he showed audiences that villains could bleed too, that beneath the cruelty lived confusion, pain, and raw humanity. Unlike actors who played evil as a one-note act, Palance gave his characters soul. He didn't just act bad, he understood bad. His villains weren't just monsters, they were broken people hiding behind violence. That psychological depth made him magnetic, earning respect from critics and co-stars who knew they were witnessing something special. And while Hollywood kept casting him as the bad guy, Palance never complained. He saw darkness as a challenge, a puzzle to solve. He once said villains were more fascinating than heroes because they carried contradictions, fears, and unspoken desires. And wow, did he prove it on screen? Every sneer, every silence carried layers of emotion and mystery. As Hollywood evolved, Palance didn't fade. He adapted. He slid effortlessly into television and international films, dominating projects like Playhouse 90 and Bronx, and making waves in the bold, stylish world of European cinema, especially spaghetti westerns. There, he found creative freedom to experiment, inspiring younger filmmakers who admired his fearless approach. And just when everyone thought he'd given all he could, he stunned audiences again. In 1991, at 72 years old, Palance stormed back with his scene-stealing role as the ruthless gangster Curly Washburn in City Slickers. Even in his 70s, he proved he still had that dangerous spark, the same one that made Hollywood fall in love with him decades before. Jack Palance's comeback in City Slickers wasn't just a win, it was a full-blown victory lap. His role balanced sharp comedy with that same intense edge audiences had always feared and admired. He could make you laugh one second and freeze your blood the next. That unforgettable performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, a long overdue tribute to a lifetime of grit, passion, and brilliance. By the early 1990s, Palance wasn't just a legend from Hollywood's golden era. He was a living force that refused to fade away. He didn't cling to nostalgia or play it safe. Instead, he kept pushing himself, diving into bold new projects that showed off his unstoppable energy, wild versatility, and that commanding on-screen presence that no one could imitate. In Cyborg 2, 1993, he stepped into the future with a performance that chilled audiences to the bone. Playing a cold, power-hungry figure in a sci-fi world, he reminded everyone that his signature glare and booming voice could dominate any genre. Even in a world of robots and tech, Jack Palance still owned the room. Then came Cops and Robertsons, 1994, where he flipped the script completely. Starring alongside Chevy Chase, he surprised everyone by matching Chase's humor with his own rugged charm and deadpan wit. It was the perfect combo, gruff meets goofy. Palance proved he could go from tough guy to comic gold without missing a beat. And he didn't stop there. That same year, he saddled up again for City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, 1994. Bringing back that mysterious Curly energy, he filled the film with old-school Western vibes and a sense of mythic adventure. It was a nod to his past, the cowboy spirit that made him an icon, but with a wink and a smile that showed he still had fun doing it. By 1995, Palance was right back in his element with Buffalo Girls, a powerful Western miniseries that reunited him with the rough, poetic frontier world he knew so well. Every line he delivered carried decades of experience and authenticity. And to top it off, he even lent his deep, thunderous voice to animation, turning a simple villain role into something dark, theatrical, and unforgettable. Jack Palance's deep, thunderous voice took on a new kind of power when he played Rothbart in The Swan Princess, 1994. His dark, commanding tone gave the villain a presence that felt larger than life. Even kids who'd never seen his old westerns instantly recognized that voice, rich, haunting, and full of raw authority. It was proof that Palance didn't need to be on screen to dominate it. His voice alone could steal the show. As his career entered its final act, Palance didn't fade away. He just shifted gears. He kept working steadily, picking roles that reflected the wisdom of age and his never-ending passion for storytelling. Every new project seemed to carry a little more soul, a little more heart, and that unmistakable Palance gravitas that never left him. One of his most powerful late roles came in Ebenezer, 1998, a Western twist on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Casting Jack as Scrooge was genius. He turned the cold, greedy miser into a rugged frontierman haunted by loss, guilt, and the hope for redemption. It wasn't just acting, it was transformation. Palance poured grit and emotion into the role, proving that even as he grew older, he could still mix strength with deep vulnerability like no one else could. He followed that success with Treasure Island, 1999, diving back into classic adventure, and then Sarah, Plain and Tall, Winter's End, 2000, where his presence brought a raw, emotional weight to the beloved TV film series. Each performance showed that the fire inside him never went out. If anything, it burned brighter with time. Then came his final bow, Prancer Returns, 2001. This gentle, heartwarming family film stood worlds apart from the fierce villains and rugged cowboys of his youth. Instead of menace, he gave audiences warmth, wisdom, and peace. A quiet goodbye from a man who had spent over 50 years carving his name into Hollywood history. It was soft, sincere, and unforgettable. And who could ever forget that legendary Oscar moment? During his acceptance speech, Palance shocked the crowd by dropping to the floor and cranking out one-armed push-ups, live on stage. The audience went wild. That single act summed him up perfectly. Strong, unpredictable, and gloriously defiant to the very end. Jack Palance wasn't just a star. He was a force that never let the world tell him when to stop. That unforgettable Oscar push-up moment wasn't just a stunt. It was a bold declaration. It screamed vitality, strength, and self-belief. Jack Palance was showing the world that even in his 70s, he still had that fire burning inside him. It was the perfect symbol of a man who refused to give in to age, doubt, or expectation. After all the lights, fame, and chaos of Hollywood, Palance eventually chose peace over pressure. He settled down in the wide-open beauty of Tehachapi, California, a place as rugged and untamed as he was. Out there, surrounded by endless sky and silence, he found balance. That land reflected everything about him: strong, solitary, and grounded in old-school values that never went out of style. While audiences saw him as the intimidating cowboy or the chilling villain, those close to him knew a different Jack, a man who valued family, privacy, and the simple rhythm of everyday life. He could switch from being a Hollywood legend to a down-to-earth dad without missing a beat. Away from the spotlight, he focused on what truly mattered: his loved ones and his peace of mind. Back in 1949, just as his career was catching fire, Palance married his first wife, Virginia Baker. Their marriage lasted nearly 20 years, from 1949 to 1968, and became one of the most defining chapters of his life. Together, they raised 3 children, building a family while he juggled the demands of movie sets and constant travel. Despite the long absences and the pressures of fame, that bond stayed strong. 2 of their children, Holly Palance and Brooke Palance, eventually stepped into the entertainment world themselves, carrying on their father's legacy with pride. But life, as always, had its share of heartbreak. On New Year's Day in 2003, tragedy struck. Virginia, his former wife and the mother of his children, was hit and killed by a car in Los Angeles. The shocking loss reopened old wounds and reminded Jack just how fragile life could be. It was the kind of tragedy that mirrored the themes of pain, morality, and redemption that had echoed through so many of his film roles. Even though they had long been divorced, her death hit him hard. It wasn't just the loss of a person. It was the closing of a deep and emotional chapter that had once defined his world. Years earlier, in May 1987, Palance had found companionship again when he married Elaine Rogers. It was another reminder that even after loss and heartbreak, he still believed in love, still believed in living life his own way, strong, private, and unbreakably true to himself. To the world, Jack Palance looked like a man carved from pure granite, unbreakable, fierce, and larger than life. Those hawk-like eyes, that iron jaw, and his cold, intimidating stare made him one of Hollywood's most unforgettable villains and anti-heroes. On screen, he was the kind of man you believed could survive anything. But behind that stone-hard image, the truth was far more fragile. And in his final years, that truth quietly came to light through the woman who knew him best. Beneath the armor and the legend was a man who carried both physical and emotional scars that never really faded. Born Vladimir Palanyuk to Ukrainian immigrant parents, he grew up poor and tough in the coal mining world of Pennsylvania. Those mines weren't just jobs, they were battles. Every day tested his strength and will. He later boxed his way out of that backbreaking life, but the damage was already done. His body carried the reminders, bruises, breaks, and burns that followed him through fame and fortune alike. Jack once admitted, "I never learned how to complain. If something hurt, you worked through it. That's how I was raised." His wife later revealed that this ironclad mindset, that refusal to show weakness, became both his strength and his curse. The world saw toughness. She saw quiet suffering. The old boxing wounds never healed. The pain from years of doing his own stunts gnawed at him, and the scars from his World War II accident, the one that changed his face and made him iconic, haunted him every day. He didn't talk about it much, not in interviews, not to friends, but at home, that pain was constant. He didn't want pity, she explained. He wanted dignity. Even as he aged and the aches grew worse, he refused to let it slow him down. Walking became harder, nights were restless, but Jack Palance kept pushing. He still rode horses, still worked his ranch, and still lived like time couldn't touch him. His willpower was legendary, almost defiant. He once said, "I'm not afraid of getting old. I'm afraid of becoming useless." That single line captured everything about him: proud, driven, and unwilling to surrender to weakness. But the deepest pain he ever faced didn't come from his body. It came from his heart. The loss of Virginia, his first wife, and the mother of his children, left a wound that never healed. For all his strength and stoicism, that tragedy broke something inside him that even time couldn't fix. Behind that famous glare was a man who had carried more hurt and more heart than the world ever truly knew. Jack Palance never talked much about his pain. Not to reporters, not to friends, not to anyone outside his home. But behind closed doors, that pain never really left him. He didn't want pity, his wife explained. He wanted dignity. And that summed him up perfectly. As the years went by, the aches grew sharper, walking became harder, and sleep came only in broken pieces. Yet Jack refused to give in. He kept working, kept riding his horses, and kept tending to his ranch like time had no hold on him. It was as if pure willpower alone could fight off the years. Even when his body began to betray him, his pride stayed unshakable. "I'm not afraid of getting old," he once said. "I'm afraid of becoming useless." That line hit deep, a glimpse into a man who had built his whole life on strength, independence, and grit. But the most painful chapter he ever faced didn't come from age or illness. It came from heartbreak. The loss of Virginia, his first wife, and the mother of his children carved a hole in his spirit that never healed. No matter how many years passed or how much success he earned, that wound stayed raw inside him. Though he remarried and found comfort again, those close to him noticed a change, a quiet dimming in his spirit, like part of him had gone with her. In his later years, his wife gently shared what Jack himself never could. Behind the legend's stoic smile was a man living with constant pain, bottled emotions, and an unspoken fear of becoming dependent on anyone. He never asked for help. Instead, he endured it all in silence. He smiled when he was tired, laughed when he hurt, and carried everything heavy, both the physical and emotional, deep inside. That was his secret, she said softly. When Jack Palance passed away in 2006 at 87, it wasn't with noise or spectacle, but with quiet dignity, the same way he'd lived. No big farewell, no final confession, just the peaceful close of a life built on toughness, pride, and unbreakable endurance. Jack Palance carried a lifelong burden, the belief that real strength meant silence. He lived by that rule, through pain, loss, and the constant pressure of fame. But even in death, he left behind a powerful message that hits harder than any movie scene. True toughness isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about having the courage to keep living boldly despite it. Maybe his greatest performance wasn't in front of a camera at all. Maybe it was in how fiercely he guarded his pride, his independence, and his dignity until his very last day. As Jack once said, "All you really own in this world is your word and your backbone. Lose either one, and you're finished." And that's the truth he lived by. He never lost his word. He never lost his backbone. But he paid dearly for that strength, in ways only his closest loved ones ever saw. On November 10, 2006, Hollywood lost one of its most commanding legends. After suffering a stroke, Jack Palance passed away quietly in California, with his beloved daughter, Holly Palance, by his side. It was a peaceful, deeply human ending to a life that had been anything but quiet. The man who once terrified audiences with a glare now rested surrounded by love, not lights or applause. In his final moments, there was no sign of the menacing villains, the steely cowboys, or the ruthless anti-heroes the world had known. Instead, there was a father, a man, closing the last chapter of a life that spanned generations and genres. His death marked the end of an era, one that stretched from Hollywood's golden age to modern cinema, leaving behind a body of work that continues to inspire. From westerns and war epics to thrillers, dramas, and even comedies, Jack Palance did it all, and he did it with power. His sharp jawline, his magnetic stare, and that deep, commanding voice turned every role into something unforgettable. He could play cold-blooded killers, broken souls, or wise old mentors, and still make each one feel real. Even as Hollywood changed and new stars rose, Palance stood apart, a timeless reminder of raw talent, old-school grit, and the kind of intensity you just don't see anymore. Jack Palance didn't just act, he lived his legend. And though the curtain finally fell, his spirit still burns in every scene he ever shot, every line he ever delivered, and every heart he ever shook. If you felt the power of Jack Palance's story, like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment to keep his legacy alive. Let's make sure the world never forgets the man who turned silence into strength and pain into timeless art.